Hello YouTube, my name is Ashley. Welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for tuning in today. So we are going to jump back into our level series, okay? Now, we are strictly working with the lower time frame as most of us are taught with BTMM. So you have like basic training, you probably saw a 4-day course and that's all the knowledge you have, right? Okay, so one thing that I want to start with pointing out is you always want to come to the screen aware of your directional bias, okay? So our overall direction here is a downtrend. And we know that because we have an 800 on top, pointed strong downward. We have an 200 below and we have a 50 below that. That signifies a downtrend. If you start to see activity where you have the 800 below and the 50 is above the 200, that's typically a pullback. That's where you probably will want to get in for the sell for a downtrend. Okay, when we have an uptrend, we have a 800 on bottom, a 200 on top, and a 50 on top. When you start to see the 50 trading below the 200, that usually signifies a pullback, and that's where you want to buy to get in. When you start to see activity like this where prices crossing above and back below the 800 and the 800 is also straight here, that's most likely a higher time frame anchor forming, and you want to kind of really range trade that for the most part if you're going to trade it, and a lot of people do. You will just primarily pay attention to what your 200 is doing overall during that time frame to know what's going on, because you're like, well, the 50 is not, the 800 is not giving me clear direction. Okay, if you don't have clear direction from the 800, pay attention to what the 200 is doing. Okay, if the 200 is flat as well at the same time as the 800, then you know you're going to pay attention to what the 50 is doing. Like here, you probably will be a bit confused because you're like, well, price is back below the 800, you know, and it is in a downtrend, but then it crossed back below and back below. So you just want to pay attention to those areas will tend to confuse people. And like I said, what you really want to do is you want to pay attention to what the 200 is doing for the most part, if you're not getting clear direction from the 800. Okay, so what we're going to jump into is the levels. Okay, now when you're looking at the 15-minute chart, we don't count quote unquote levels here. You're essentially looking at the hourly, and you're trading the 15-minute based off the hour. Okay, so what we're doing is we're actually starting with the 800. I mean the 1 hour. Okay, this is helping you with direction a lot more clearer, because like I said, everything in between is pushes. So here you have your uptrend and you have your downtrend. And remember, all we do is induce, trap, shift, induce, trap, shift, and induce, trap, shift. That's what we're doing essentially with trading swing points. Okay, swing highs and swing lows and everything in between. So let's say, for example, you came to the chart and you're like, all right, I'm about to start trading, and you didn't check at least the hourly, you're probably going to be doomed. Okay, so you always want to make sure you check the hourly first and see what we're looking at. With the hourly, you will pay attention to the pullbacks to the 15-minute, the 50 EMA. Okay, you want to get in for your buy or your sell there, and the 50 is our intraday. Well, this is what you're looking at for the week, but the 50 is our intraday activity. Okay, so you noticed here you had a peak formation low, and you see it's because it's a multi day anchor. This is actually weeks, but multi-day anchor, and to the upside. Okay, but you're looking at the 15. We go back to the 15, and remember I told you guys before, when you have EMAs kind of typically trading on top of each other or close, especially if the 800 is flat, you're forming an anchor. Okay, so we know we have our anchor. I didn't want to trade this because I wasn't sure what's going on. I'm just speaking as a newbie. I don't know what's going on, so I didn't want to trade this. But now you have clear direction. But once again, like I said, if your 800 is not giving you direction, you're paying attention to what your 200 is doing, and of course your 50 is intraday, so you definitely want to pay attention to that. But you're paying attention where your 200 is telling you to go. Okay, What I want you to note is you are essentially paying attention to pullbacks to the 13 EMA more than anything intraday. Okay, so let's get to something more current. Just as far as, you know, I want the Asian box to show so you can look at something as if it's, let's just say this is today. Okay. All right. So let's just say this is New York. This is Asia. What I do is my blue boxes, honestly, I go to the work time indicator and I take off 2.5 hours. I use my templates visually for time. Okay, everything is about time. You are able to, for the most part, your setup will come at the last 1/3 of the blue box, or the start of London session, or even New York session, and sometimes it'll actually come in the blue box. But for me, I just like to take off the last 1/3. I turn on the London session box, and I turn on the New York session box. Okay. So let's just say we got to the chart today, and we're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm confused about the direction. I'm waiting for something. I'm waiting for a stop hunt low or a stop hunt high. What I want to point out is you don't really see stop hunts on the hourly, but the 15 you'll see a stop hunt to like yesterday's low or yesterday's high, or the top of the Asian blue box or the bottom blue box, whatever. You'll see, stop hunts to an area. Stop hunt also just means consolidation, okay, which also means anchor, which also means that's the area you're looking to get into. You always want to get into before the 5 and 13 crosses, because that means that's the shift. Okay, when you're dealing with anchors that it crosses below and it crosses back above and back below and that type of stuff, you don't really want to be looking to sell in the middle of this. Well, here you can, but you don't want to buy here. You want to wait till it pulls back. Okay, so let's just say we came to the charts today and we're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, remember, you have direction from your 50 at least. Even though your 200 is flat, that still means consolidation. You have direction from your 50, trading back and forth to the 200 to the 50. You see a W here, and your 50's been turning up, okay? But you see yesterday's high here. You're like, oh, I'm looking for a W off yesterday's high. It rejected yesterday's high, pulled back to the water, made a W, took off, okay? So essentially, what you're looking for to quote unquote count a level, you're looking for all this activity. This is still up. You don't want to get in no sales here. None told you to sell here, okay? It started to turn over the 5 EMA. Okay, now you're like, okay, well, I'm going to sell here. Still don't want to sell here because our 50 is pointing straight up. You just want a reason to buy. Now, you could take this W and buy, okay? And you could take this W and buy. V's are still W's and A's are still M's. But you could take this to buy. But all you're doing is looking for a reason to get in for a buy, okay? And this was a reason. The closer to the 50 EMA, the better. But let's just say you have your peak formation here, your 1, your pullback 2, pullback 3, extended, and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's people love this. It's 3-day ADR. It's 3 times ADR. It's a trend reversal. 3 times ADR does not mean trend reversal, okay? It means reversal. It doesn't mean trend reversal. You got to remember that, okay? When you're in this type of situation where you have strong direction of the trend, and you have your 800 pointing down, and you know that we're in a downtrend, and you have a pullback and it's forming off of the Mayo, that's kind of typically how you would catch a reset on this time frame. Okay, you would just, resets is just the pullback. Okay, you just need a reason to sell here. You pull it back to the 800, it'll most likely be 2 pins to it, one leg, 2 leg, and sell down. but this is your reset. Okay, you have a trend reset, you have I guess an anchor reset as well, where you'll have like a nadir apex within the anchor, and then you will have a trend change, okay, where you will have an anchor and it'll start to do, like here you have an anchor here and it started a new trend. Okay, so what I wanted to point out to you is, typically when you have maybe like a pullback situation, you'll see this 513 cross, 1350 cross, 5200 cross, 200, 800 cross. Okay, a lot of people get hung up because they're looking at these EMAs to cross for level counts, and then when they're in situations like these where they don't ever see those EMAs crosses, they don't know what to do. Okay, they're confused. All you were doing is you're looking for your reason to sell. So we know we're in a downtrend. You're looking for a pullback to either the 200 EMA or the 50 EMA as your reason to sell. As here, you're looking for a pullback to the 50 EMA or the 200 EMA to buy. You really only get those EMAs at certain times, but for the most part, you'll just keep having price push up and pull back to the 200, push up and pull back to the 200. So how would you know how to count levels if you don't see those EMAs crossing? You know, even here, you see prices pushing off, pulling back to the 800, the 200, pushing down, pulling back to the 200, pushing down. You don't see those EMAs crossing. So what you need to really focus on, this is a good example. You're focusing on how many times price pulls back intraday. You're really looking at how many times it pulls back to the catch up to the 13 EMA. And then if you're moving throughout the week, you're looking at how many times it pulls back to the water. You know, I would definitely, this is the day. It'll start here, push, and this is New York, and it'll end here. Okay, and then we're back here. There's an M off yesterday's high, pulls here, and pushes off. So what you need to understand is just look for activity to the 13 EMA and the 50 EMA intraday. Okay, and I know I'm looking for buys here because the 50 is pointing up, and when EMAs just turn, that means it's consolidating. But now we're above the 200, so I'm still looking for buys. Okay, I'm following the 13 EMA. Now we're above the 800. I'm still looking for reasons to buy. Now this happened to be a situation where it formed in a multi-day M, so you know I want to sell against that, and now I see a multi-day W. I'm going to buy against that. So what you always want to do is, as a new trader, you come to the chart, you want to mark off that swing high and swing low. Well, I'm on the 15. I know this is the last high that was formed, so I need to trade away from this. Okay, oh, this is the last low that was formed, I need to trade away from. That's all you're doing. You're finding that high, trading away from it until otherwise noted. You're finding that low and trade away from it until otherwise noted, whether it's an uptrend or a downtrend. Okay, so you see here, we don't have those EMAs that I was talking about, but you have strong direction of what's going on with the 50 and the 200. So I know I'm looking for reasons to buy. The M's that I do not want to take is, you see there's, you know, to a lot of people, they're like, oh, this is level 1, 2, 3. Mind you, levels pushes on the lower time frame would be one level on a higher time frame. So of course all of this would be an anchor. It'll be a level 1 and level 2. So when you start to pull back to the 200, that means you're on a level setting up for the higher time frame. And then if it pulls back to the 800, that means it's really a level for the higher time frame, the one above that next one. So for the most part, intraday, you're just paying attention to what your 50 is doing. The 50 is what you see that turns up and down often. The 200 is still holding its direction. And then when you start to see something different, it's still pointing up. You know, it's still holding its direction upward. But the 50 is what's going, hey, I'm going up and down, up and down. That's what you're paying attention to intraday, what the 50 is doing. So if the 50 is pointing upward and I got an M, all I'm going to do is trade into that EMA and get stopped out and be mad at at everybody and everything like, oh, this strategy doesn't work. It doesn't work in 2021. It doesn't work. I've been trading this strategy for so long. It still works. There's nothing wrong with it. The more you understand what's going on, and I mean the behavior of the market, the better you will be able to trade. Eventually I will get into more different ways to count levels, as far as like the yesterday's highs and lows and the highs and lows of the weeklies and whatnot, and what you're looking at for EMAs and stuff. But for the most part, if you were a new trader and you just have basic training for this and you're like, I still don't know how to count levels, you're paying attention to, all you're doing is 1, 2, 3, pull back, 1, 2, 3, pull back, 1, 2, 3, pull back. Now you're just gonna figure out what you're pulling back to. So here you see there's a 1, 2, 3. 1, pull back to the 13 EMA, 2, pull back to the 13 EMA, 3, pull back to the 13 EMA, then pull back to the 50. 1 to the 13 EMA, 2 to the 13 EMA, 3 to the 13 EMA, pull back to the 50. And the 200 is close, so it's going to pull back to the trap off the lowest EMA. But here, 1, 2 is straight, so that just shot up straight, but it pulled back. If you have this type of activity, just pay attention to what's this doing with the 5. The 5 is not being broken, so you're just going to keep buying. Now you will get out for your sell if you're just looking at intraday, and get back in here, or you would hold it. The 50 is still pointing up. You would hold that for at least 2-3 days. So essentially, even here, we have activity pulling back into the 50. At the end of the last quarter of the Asian session, it formed a W. You would get in here. Now, what I want to point out is you are definitely allowed to trade Sundays. You are definitely allowed to trade during Asia. The moves doesn't always happen in London. It's not always New York. The moves sometimes happen in Asia as well. 3 times ADR does not mean reversal. 3 times ADR means just that, reverse. Okay, it doesn't mean time. It doesn't mean trend change. It doesn't mean, oh, we're in a new trend. It doesn't mean that. It just means you caught one leg, like one push. That's all it means. It doesn't mean we're looking for a trend change. What you're essentially doing is you're trading your levels from the hourly on the 15. So you would be paying attention to how many times price pulls back to the 13 here as well, but interact with the 50. That's how you're counting levels on the hourly. Push 1, pull back to the 50. Push 2, pull back to the 50. Push 3, pull back to the 50. That's what you're paying attention to, okay? And then you'll get these, and you definitely have level 4, level 5, level 6, level 7. You will have that, especially if you're in a trend. I see all these levels. I don't understand what's going on. Just pay attention to what the 50 and the 200 is doing, and you'll be solid, okay? Especially here, I get my direction from the hourly at least. If you're just somebody with basic BTMM training, you're looking at the hourly, and you see, okay, well, we're above the 800. We're below the 800 here. Look for reasons to sell. Your best entries are when it pulls back to the 200 or when it pulls back to the 50, sell. That's all you need. You just need a pullback to sell. You know the direction. You just need that pullback up to sell. Even with the buys, you know the direction. You just need that pullback down to buy. That's all you're looking for. So don't overcomplicate it. Don't create a million rules. It's really that easy. In my opinion, like I said, do not take an M into a very, very, very pointed up 50, and don't take a W into a very, very pointed down M off the 50 as well, and you'll be okay. That's all you need to pay attention to. As you can see as well, you don't see much stop hunt box activity. Don't be looking for that either. You really will only find that when you're dealing with anchor situations. You'll see a stop hunt to the stop hunt box. Okay, if we're not dealing with an anchor situation, you don't see any activity to these boxes. You see them trading to it and through it. You don't see any activity towards the higher, the top stop hunt box, right? But you see it to the low, and people are thinking, oh, I see a stop hunt box to the low, so that means P formation low, let me buy. Nope, that's a trap move to the stop hunt box. You don't want any stop hunt box lows in a downtrend. You want stop hunt box high in a downtrend. Just like in an uptrend, you want a stop hunt box low, move up. If you get a stop hunt box high in a downtrend, an uptrend, it's probably a trap. Unless you're dealing with a higher time frames pullback, then you'll get 2-3 days of pullback activity where you'll get a stop hunt box to the high in a downtrend, and you had a stop hunt box low. It went between each other. And I'm going to get into levels more, like I said, with how to count them. The blue tracer, the green tracer, whatever color, red tracer, whatever you want to make your yesterday's high and low. We'll get into that to where you will understand level 3 activity and what you're looking for when it comes to that in EMAs and everything. So I wanted to keep this very short. Hopefully you saw my higher level time frame video to tie in everything, but for the most part, this is all you need as someone who has basic training on BTMM and you're like, I can't figure out the levels. Just pay attention to how many times they pull back to the 13 EMA, and then make sure you're paying attention to the hourly. They're pulling back to that 1 Maya to the 50, 150, 250. Like, just pay attention to that, because that's your hourly levels on the 1 hour, and this is what you're trading for that week. This is what you're trading. So you're trading an hourly level for the week. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. All I did is put a 1, 2, 3 to this 13 EMA, which is essentially the 50 EMA on the 15-minute time frame. So even if you're looking at the hourly, right? I'm in a downtrend, but I see that the 13 EMA is pointing up. You don't want that. That's the 15 intraday. You don't want that. That's a pullback, but it's trapping off the water, the 50 EMAs. So that's my reason to sell, so pay attention to the EMAs I pay attention to the most would be the 200, the 50, and the 13 EMA. Okay. Like I said, if you're dealing with a situation where you are in a downtrend and you're like, but the 50 is above the 200, that's pullback situation. Okay. And once again, you're just following what the 50 and the 200 is doing. The 200 is flat. The 800 is starting to turn up. Okay, most likely you're an anchor. You're an anchor activity. The 200 is flat, which means the 800 is flat on the 15-minute chart. When you get flat EMAs, that signifies consolidation. Okay, which means that's an anchor of any time form. So like even here, you have a down 200, but it's flat. That means that's an anchor forming off a lower time frame, for the 15. Okay, 800 is flat here. It's turning up. It's starting to signify higher time frame, 4 hours starting to turn up. Okay, here 200, that means the hourly is starting to turn up. You have anchors forming, so just pay attention to those things. And like I said, I'll go over in another video trap stuff to look for when you're in a downtrend and trap stuff to look for when you're in an uptrend. But for the most part, if you've had basic BTMM training and you're like, I just don't understand the levels, your levels are actually on the hourly. You're just trading the pushes off the 15-minute chart intraday, and you're essentially just paying attention to if we're closing above or below the 13 EMA, pulling back to the 50 and going from there. Okay, so I hope this helps you figure out what you're looking for. Like I said, your anchors will most likely be forming off of the 200. On the 50, if you have a strong trend, you'll just be paying attention to what the 50 and the 200 is doing directional wise. And of course it pulled back to the 200, trapped above and below it, and then pushed off. So I hope this helps you. Like I said, make sure you definitely tune into my higher time frame levels video to essentially for you to understand what exactly you're trading, because a lot of people don't understand what they're trading. They don't understand you're looking for swing highs and swing lows when it comes to level, or if it's intraday, it's higher highs and higher lows, but you're essentially trading swing points. And when you start to realize that's what you're trading, it'll keep you from being stopped out, as much as you probably are losing or getting dragged the wrong way. And then some. And like I said, if you were dealing with a situation where you're in a downtrend and you're like, well, but the price is above the 5 is above the 13, that's a pullback. You're in a downtrend and prices, the 50 is above the 200, that's a pullback. Like you have to be able to recognize those things especially if you're focusing on the EMAs, which most people do when they first learn this strategy. Like I said, when you're dealing with the 513 cross, the 1350 cross, 250 cross, 800, 200 cross, you don't really always have that. You have a lot of this where you're like, I don't see any of that. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to get in. Just honestly, intraday, pay attention to what your 50 and 200 is doing. And that's how you want to move. And you'll be a lot more successful if because you're just supposed to be following price. So that's what you're following. And I scroll down because you see now when we're setting up with a higher time frame M or W, you start to see those EMAs crossing, and then you see it cross back down shortly here, and then you don't see that no more here, but you see it here, you know, and then you're like, oh, I see it here, but you don't see it here. So you don't want to focus on those EMAs crossing. That just gives you some form of confirmation, but really when what you're looking at is something is crossing back above and back below on the higher time frame. Like we have our rules over M and W, you know, cross below the 13, back above, back below, or above, back above, below, back above. You still have that as well with the 50 EMA. You know, it's closing, the 50 closed below the 800, back above the 800, back below, and back above. You know, you have that with the 200 as well. So I just pay attention to that for that reason, but you really want to learn how to just count. You know, you see here you have a 1 pullback, 2 pullback, 3, and essentially it's a smaller 1 2 3 to the 13, 1 2 3 to the 13, pull back to the 50, 1 2 3 to the 13, pull back to the 50, 1 2 3 to the 13, pull back to the 50. So that's what you're doing with counting. You're just going 1 2 3, pull back, 1 2 3, pull back, 1 2 3, pull back, probably deeper pullback now, you know, and start over. So I try to keep these videos short. Make sure you watch them over and over again until you understand what I'm saying, and tie it into the other stuff that I've posted for you guys. I hope this has helped you. If you're somebody who's like, I just seen a 4-day course and I still don't get it, and I think I understand it, but I don't. Like I said, stay away from those trap M's. Our 50 is pointed straight up, so an M, you know, what you would only take it into the 50. The 50 is giving you a good direction. Even though the 50 is flat here, remember I told you anchors form when EMAs are flat. So you have an anchor or a bounce, an intraday bounce, if that makes any sense to you. But you know, that's your reason to buy. You're just overall looking for a reason to buy in a uptrend, and you're looking for a reason to sell in the downtrend. Don't make it that complicated. And everything will fall into place. So once again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. I went ahead and I added a Telegram channel. You guys are free to join it, and you know, if you want to request a video or have a question about where can you find a something or something like that, go ahead and join in, and feel free to chop it up with each other. Thank you so much for your time, and happy trading.